and gentlemen, enjoy the very, very special show tonight. Our first guest is already here and he holds nothing back, not even the dead. The Hollywood medium Tyler Henry, who's currently on a sold-out nationwide tour, says he can communicate with people who have died. The celebrity's favorite clairvoyant medium speaks to loved ones who have passed, offering comforting and closure to their family members. Please welcome Tyler Henry! Woo-hoo!
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You know, I grew up in Brazil, and in Brazil, we are very superstitious. We are very spiritually driven.
Yes.
And everybody here on my set told me they used to watch you. So it's such a pleasure, not just for me, but for my whole team to have you here. But Tyler, tell me, how is your process? How did you get the message? How does it work? Like, I'm so curious to know.
So my job is that of a clairvoyant medium. And a clairvoyant is really just a big fancy word that just means clear sight. It's a French word. And basically, it's how I receive intuitive impressions. So I get very strong mental images. They sometimes feel kind of like waking daydreams. And my job as a medium is to be able to interpret those impressions that I get and make sense of them, deliver them in a way that's going to be significant to the person I'm reading. And so in my job, sometimes it focuses on people who've passed. Sometimes information about people's personal lives will come up in readings, but all with the goal of really helping somebody move forward. And that's really my goal. I try to just leave everybody that I meet better than I found them. And I kind of just use this intuitive process to glean whatever the person's meant to know.
Yeah, I feel like that's your secret and how so many people relate it to you, because what I've heard every time somebody gets a reading from you, they just leave the room feeling relieved and better. But I also would like to know, what is the difference between a psychic and a medium? Because you're not a psychic.
Well, I would say this. I think being a medium is a psychic ability, but not all psychics are mediums. So when we think of psychics, I know it's a lot, but we think of psychics, it's like somebody that we think tell the future or that kind of thing. What I do is really much more focused on the present and the past. And then sometimes you can get an idea of the future trajectory based on present things. But as a medium, most of my job revolves around connecting with people who've passed.
And you have a huge waiting list. How do you choose who you're going to read?
Well, as of right now, it's over 300,000 people.
Wow.
Which has been insane. I'd have to clone myself to meet that demand. But I select people randomly. The majority of my readings will just happen completely randomly. And then a good portion of them are done for free, for charity readings. And that's been a really great way to be able to just touch all different kinds of people's lives from all different backgrounds.
And what about celebrities? When they come to you and they ask for a reading, what are they looking for? What are the most common questions from celebrities?
Sure. Well, we had a policy when Hollywood Medium was airing where, you know, if a celebrity was interested in a reading, the only way they could get read was on the TV show. And that always went through production. But now that I do readings, you know, off the show, I just read as many people as I can. And the process is generally the same. Usually people all have the same questions, wanting validation that there's more to life than what we see. Sometimes people feel stuck. But really, I think a lot of people that come to receive a reading don't have their mind made up. They're maybe not fully believers. They're not fully skeptics. They just kind of want to see what I'll say. And we found in filming the show that so many people had these transformative experiences because they got something out of it that they weren't expecting. So just that element of surprise, I think, can be really jolting and healing in a really interesting way.
So Tyler, when did you realize that you were gifted? How did that happen?
Well, I do consider what I do to be more of an ability than a gift. It's something I'm able to do. But I always try to avoid calling it a gift because I never want people to think of me as being gifted or like above somebody else just because I can do what I do. But I actually came from very humble beginnings. I grew up in a pretty Christian household. We didn't talk about spirits or ghosts or psychics or any of that. And then when I was 10 years old, I literally just woke up one night and I had this knowingness that my grandmother was going to die. And I didn't know how to explain it. It just felt like a memory that hadn't happened yet. And so it was really confusing. And I went into the room to try to explain this to my mom. And as I was telling her, her phone rang. And she was like, okay, hold on. And she answered the phone. And it was my dad on the other end who had just called her telling her that my grandmother just took her final breath. So that news came immediately. And it just completely changed how I grieved my grandma's death moving forward, because I did have a premonition. But at 10 years old, it's more just something that happens to you. It's not something that you identify as an ability. So it took years to really get that understanding that this wasn't just a one-time deal, that this could happen regularly and then eventually on command.
So incredible. And why do you think you're given this gift, or should I call ability?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think you're given this ability?
I think everybody has an intuition. If you look at the word intuition, it breaks down to inner tuition or inner knowledge. And it's something that we all have the capability to connect with. We get first impressions. We sometimes get a bad vibe when we enter a place. And some people hold more weight to those feelings than others. But I would say, just from my perspective, I am an only child. I grew up very much alone, kind of solitary. And so it gave me a lot of time to really refine my intuition, go with my gut, kind of like beat to my own drum. And I think that that actually was helpful and served me later in life when I would really have to just trust what I was feeling versus, necessarily the opinions of other people.
Did you ever felt scared, especially like at the beginning, you were only 10 years old, you said? Did you ever felt scared of disability?
I felt more scared of how people would respond to it. I dealt with a lot of opposition. I dealt less with skepticism and more with fear. When I was in middle school, a bully tried to beat me up in a bathroom, and I turned around, I looked at him, and I told him that his aunt was telling me that he needed to leave me alone, and it just terrified him. And his aunt had passed away the night before in a car accident. So little things like that would just kind of come up around students at school, and that definitely was kind of scary to have to deal with that aspect. But if anything, like, the departed are lovely. It's living people that sometimes can be a little difficult.
It must be really, really hard to be a teenager and during the process of discovering yourself.
Yeah.
And then knowing so much about so many other people, that must be terrifying.
It was a lot, and not really knowing how to contextualize or place a lot of that information. And it just kind of put me in a whole other world that I wasn't even ever expecting. But one thing led to another. I graduated high school when I was 16 with the goal of trying to become a hospice nurse, because I knew that I had this ability, but I didn't know to what extent I wanted to share it publicly. And I thought that in working with dying people, I'd be able to really comfort them. And that was the goal. And then it changed.
So that's when you made this your purpose in life, when you graduated high school and you're like, I'm going to make this my purpose?
Yeah, I knew in some capacity I needed to share these very comforting, validating messages with people, but I just didn't know that it would take me in the direction of being a very public medium. So I thought I could do it more privately. And then through word of mouth, I just ended up getting inundated with requests for readings.
And can you connect to any spirits, or you need their loved ones to create a bridge?
Generally, it has to do with the person I'm reading. So people ask me all the time, could you call up George Washington or whatever? And I wish. That'd be fascinating to see what he'd have to say, but it doesn't work that way. Generally, I find that our loved ones are connected to us. When we think of like haunted houses or haunted places, I think if anything, people are more likely to be haunted than actual geographical places. So I think really in essence, it's about the connection. I show up to the reading, the person receiving the reading shows up, and then they often hear kind of what they're meant to hear based on who's passed and what they're going through in their personal life.
Tyler, I have an icon that I wish I could have met in my life, which is Princess Diana.
Oh, yes.
Have you ever connected with her?
I have always wanted to. I think that'd be the most amazing reading. And she actually was very close with a psychic named Sally Morgan. When she was alive, she used to get readings with her over the phone. And so Sally, who's a UK medium, is really the only one that I know of that's spoken with Diana in life and probably in passing. But it would be so interesting. I think Prince Harry could benefit from a reading. So definitely. You never know. I mean, someday it could happen.
Harry clearly has
Give me a call.
Harry definitely has a wound that he needs to heal.
Totally.
From losing his mother in such a young age. And I feel like that would be so interesting, such an interesting experience for him to experience.
It would. And what I found in filming Hollywood Medium, reading over 200 celebrities, was that some readings are great when they're done in a public way to kind of bring the audience along for the journey. And then some readings are better private. And I think if I ever did have the opportunity to read Prince Harry, I think that'd be such a private, intimate thing that I would never want to broadcast, but I think could be really meaningful.
Definitely, you should have Harry on your show.
That's right. Call me up.
Just saying. And talking about your show, you have your own show around your special abilities. You host all the celebrities. They come in and you connect with their loved ones. Why did you decide to make your ability public?
Well, I knew that it was kind of inevitable. When I was 16, started doing readings through word of mouth. That eventually spread to LA, where people are a lot more open-minded as far as getting readings. And that's just the direction my life went. So, celebrities were not my initial passion, as far as I didn't always dream of reading celebrities. But what I found in reading them was that it gave an opportunity, even if I didn't recognize the person, to share the experience that person's getting with their audience. I mean, I read people from Ronda Rousey to Terrell Owens, sports people, people in all different industries, rappers. So people who might not normally be into psychics or mediums, they got to watch their favorite icon, get a reading, have an experience, and then hopefully get a sense of healing from that. So to me, it was so much more than just celebrities.
And how did you become famous? How did you start?
Well, I was very lucky. At 19 years old, I went on the Dr. Phil show. Ellen Kardashians was one of my first television appearances. And then from there, I really just did reading after reading after reading to prove myself to a number of executives that I could do what I did. And then I was given a show.
Who was the very first celebrity that called you and say, hey, I want a reading? And how did you go?
Technically, it was Sarah Paulson when I was young.
Oh my gosh, I love Sarah.
It was over the phone and it was lovely. But for the show, one of the first was actually Snooki, of all people, from Jersey Shore. So she was, about this tall, but energy about this big. So she was great.
Well, Tyler, unfortunately, we lost a lot of people due to COVID recently. Does COVID represent something bigger in the spiritual plane for you?
Well, I just think it's a tragedy that we collectively can all relate to. We've gone through this, and I think if anything, it lends an opportunity for us to look at our mortality, look at our life, and really make the most of the time that we have. There's so much loss, so much unpredictability. I think if anything, it hits home to the importance of communicating to our loved ones in the here and the now of what matters. And I think this whole past year has just shown us that we can't hold off sometimes on saying important things. It's better to say them now because you never know when you'll get the chance.
Tyler, you are in the middle of a multi-city tour. You're going nationwide. Tell us where we can see you next and a little bit about your live shows.
Yes, so I'm going to be going all across the country. It's going to be at least a 32-city tour. We might be adding more. But I'm going to be coming to Anaheim December 2nd and 3rd coming up, as well as just all over. People can actually get a full list of tickets on my website, tylerhenryhollywoodmedium.com, to get a full rundown of where I'll be. But traveling is one of my favorite things to do. I love that I'm able to come and read people all across the country who might not be able to come to LA. So I've been able to just meet some incredible people, and I'm just excited to hit the road and kind of get back to some normalcy.
I'll definitely be in Anaheim. I'll be definitely there watching.
Yes, I will hook you up with some
I cannot miss it.
Absolutely, we'll do it.
For sure. And what's next for you? I mean, you have your nationwide tour, you have your booking out, you have your own show.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, later this year, I have a series that I've been working on in the past year. It's going to be announced, so people can stay tuned for that. And then early next year, I have the release of my second book, Here and Hereafter, that's coming out. So we're very excited to do that.
Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show and for dedicating your life to help people finding comforting and closure. It's pretty much amazing. It's pretty amazing what you do. Like, you dedicate your life to help others. That's such an honored purpose in life. We can all learn so much from you just by what you do.
Thank you. And you know what? I have one thing to add. For those out there who are curious about finding their own calling, I always tell people our interests are indications of our calling. So think about that. That's my parting lesson. But this has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.